Hi grade 4s, today we're going to continue reading Front Desk. We're going to be reading chapters 55, 56, and 57. As usual, I'm reading this with permission from both Kelly Yang and Scholastic. I'd love to see your thoughts on these chapters on Seesaw. If you have any questions, post them there, as well as any drawings or notes that you do. So, chapter 55. This is moving on after she had to return those jeans to the girl who originally owned them. I know she was really embarrassed about that. It was a pretty serious situation to be in, and all eyes are on her. So we're going to see kind of what happens. I thought the whole point of having customers fill in their address was so you could mail them their stuff back in case they left it behind, Mr. Yao said after the girl and her mom left. Wasn't that your idea? I couldn't speak. The humiliation had burned a hole in my tongue. I vowed never to talk to him again. My parents slipped back in through the back door and joined us. "Where'd you guys go?" Mr. Yao asked. "You guys missed the whole thing." In all his excitement over the jeans, he had completely forgotten about the immigrants in room 6. I looked up at my mom and could tell from her face that they were safe. My mom would never know the price I paid for their safety. Jason knew. The whole time his dad was interrogating me, he had been looking out the window. He saw my parents knock on room 6's door, and he saw them sneak the immigrants out of their rooms and out the back. He saw the whole thing. But he never said anything. "Dear Jason, thank you for not saying anything to your dad. I don't know why, but you didn't. Maybe you're not so bad after all. Your friend," crossed out, "your classmate, Mia." I stared at that last part. Maybe you're not so bad after all. My grandmother used to say that people don't change. Our heart is like a rubber band. It might stretch a little, but eventually it snaps right back. I'm not sure if I believed that. Part of me did. We were talking about Jason here, the kid who took my pencil and licked it. The other part of me, though, wondered. There used to be a time when I let my cousins walk all over me. They were all boys and I was the only girl. And in China, girls are kind of like spare tires. It's nice if you have one, but they're not important. Even my grandmother, whom I loved and missed so much, believed this. She believed it like she believed the sky was blue, like it was a fact. Girls were just not as useful as boys. She never came out and said this, of course, but she had little ways of showing it, like always putting the best dishes in front of my cousins at family dinners and not me. She'd pat their heads and tell them to eat up before the dish got cold, and I'd watch as they snatched and grabbed the food with their greedy chopsticks until there were hardly any more pieces of chicken left for me, only burnt onions. One day, I picked up my chopsticks and started grabbing back. I snaked chicken, shrimp, whatever I could pick up with my chopsticks and hoarded it all in my mouth. "Hey," Shen complained, "not fair." We weren't close then, and I narrowed my eyes at him. As I picked up my chopsticks to reach for more food, Shen blocked my chopsticks with his. Our chopsticks collided like swords. The two of us held them in position, neither willing to back down. It went on like this the next night and the night after that. Eventually, our chopstick war got so bad that my grandmother had to use her own chopsticks to draw a line in the food and declare one side mine and the other side Shen's. And from then on, every dish had a line. I remember countless birthdays, Chinese New Year, everything had a line. Then one day, I looked down and the line was gone. My grandmother had forgotten to draw it. I waited for Shen to take the first piece of chicken, and he waited for me. Neither of us grabbed. Neither of us hoarded. Somehow, we'd gone from food enemies to friends. Neither of us knew exactly when it happened. We just knew that we no longer needed that line. I thought about that and how many people do change as I thought about Jason. I didn't end up giving the letter to him. I was going to, but for some reason, I just didn't. You know how sometimes you raise your hand, but when the teacher finally calls on you, you pretend you were only tucking your hair? It was kind of like that. As the first of the spring flowers bloomed, I tried to forget the painful memory of the jeans. It helped that I had Hank and Lupe to distract me, and the mailman. Every time he came, I thought about the contest. I thought, this is it. Today's the day my life's going to change. But the letter from Vermont didn't arrive. Other unexpected news did, though, which completely shook up our world. Mr. Yao was selling the motel. My parents' faces turned white, and the temperature in the room plummeted as Mr. Yao told them the news. A real estate deal for him in Nevada had gone bad, and he needed a cash injection. So what does that mean for us? My parents asked him. You? Mr. Yao asked. He snorted like we hadn't occurred to him at all. Then he shrugged. Depends on what the new owner wants to do with you, I guess. He said it like we were inventory, freely disposable, along with the washer and the dryer. Lupe told me not to worry. Motels weren't like houses. They took ages to sell. There's a whole inspection process and everything, she said. I'm sure you guys are going to be out here before Mr. Yao even finds a buyer. Have you told your parents about the essay contest yet? No, I said. I don't know what it was about me and secrets. Once I had one, I just couldn't let it go. I would feed it and snuggle it, and it would grow and grow inside me until it took on a life of its own. So no, I hadn't told my parents. I've been too busy imagining the look of surprise on their face when I actually won. They're gonna freak when you win, Lupe said with a smile. My parents did freak, but not over me winning the contest. They were freaking out over who the new motel owner was going to be. Oh God, what if he hates Chinese people, my mother asked, biting down on her nail. Or if he wants to run it himself, my father said. Should we look for another job, my mom asked. What should we do? My parents paced around the living room, fretting and panicking, while I sat quietly in the corner. That was the problem with keeping a secret. You're all alone on your own little island. Have you ever thought about how nice it would be if we owned the motel, I asked. I just kind of threw it out there. My dad laughed. That would be nice, he said. He looked into the distance and let himself imagine for a second. We wouldn't have to work every single day. We can take Sundays off together as a family. We could all go swimming, my mom added. I'd love to jump in that pool. Me too, I said. I would love to get some sleep, my dad said. If we owned the motel, I could put up a sign that says, sorry, I'm sleeping, come back in the morning. A smile played at his lips as he had pictured how extraordinary life could be if he slept through the night. Then his smile faded and reality set in. Maybe in another life, he said, picking up his broom. I shook my head. No, Dad, not in another life. In this life. Our eyes locked. A second passed, and then another. And then I whispered my secret. Chapter 56. They didn't say a word at first. I thought perhaps they were too shocked. Sometimes when I'm too shocked, I can't speak either. That's why I write things down. And even then, sometimes I can't bring myself to deliver them, like my thank you letter to Jason, which was sitting there at the bottom of my backpack. I thought maybe my parents were just taking their time too, taking their time to find the right words. But then I looked up and I saw my mother's disappointment. You're not gonna win, she said. Her voice was certain, positive. She looked right at me, her eyes a mixture of pain and sadness. But not like, I'm sad you're not gonna win. Sad like, I'm sad you actually thought you could win. I wanted to grab her and shake her. You're wrong, Mom. I'm not a bike. You'll see, I yelled. My mom put her hands on my arms. No, honey, she said. I mean those sweepstakes are all rigged. The news slapped me across the face. For a second, I was fully blind, and then I flat out denied it. It's not rigged. No, of course not, my dad jumped in. But just think about it. Why would they just give away a motel like that, my mother asked. Well, because they're old, I said. They don't care about the money. They're doing out of the goodness of their hearts. Have you ever seen anybody in this country do something out of the goodness of their heart? Well, the doctor who fixed you up, remember him? My mother's face softened. She didn't talk about the contest being rigged after that. Chapter 57. Mr. Yao came over the next day, poring over the numbers and figures in the big ledger with an intensity I'd never seen before. He took over the entire front desk, making calls and pounding so madly on the calculator, I thought that it might break. I didn't really want to be in the same room with him after what happened with the jeans, but I stayed behind so I could put the blue baseball cap on the table. Mr. Yao looked up from the ledger and he pointed at the baseball cap. That used to be the old manager's, he said. I didn't say anything. I didn't really feel like talking to Mr. Yao, and especially not about the hat. His name was Yifei. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's spelled Y-E with space and then F-E-I. I'm going to look that up later. But he called himself Jerry, he continued. He picked up the hat and chuckled to himself. I remember when he got this hat. He didn't even know what the Yankees were. Well, so why did he get it? I wondered out loud, instantly frowning because I'd broken my vow never to talk to Mr. Yao again. Darn. Well, he liked the way the Y looked. His name started with Y, he said. Mr. Yao put the cap back on the desk and looked into the distance. He was a good guy, that Yi. Very hard worker. Wait, what? Had I heard that right? Oh yeah, the two before him, totally useless. Incompetent, doesn't even cut it. They couldn't do a single thing without calling me, he said, shaking his head. How many managers have you had? I asked him. Oh, I don't know. I don't count these things. And we were back. These things. But he was a good one, that Yi. I wondered for a second how Mr. Yao would talk about us after we left for Vermont. How would he take the news? Sooner or later, they all leave, Mr. Yao answered with a sigh, as if he had read my thoughts. Maybe if he was nicer to them, they wouldn't leave, I thought. As I gazed at his hardened face by all the years and managers who'd come and gone, I wondered what young Mr. Yao was like when he first started out. Was he less of a jerk or the same? I wished I could ask him. The phone disrupted my thoughts. Mr. Yao grabbed it, and in an instant he was back to his usual no-nonsense, you're only as good as your last envelope self. Bobby, no listen, I'll get you the money, he said into the phone, waving me away to give him some privacy. I went into my room and replayed what Mr. Yao said about the old manager in my head. A part of me hoped he would say good things about us after we left, even if he never said them to us. The next week, the letter I'd been waiting for arrived. I held it in my trembling hands, staring and staring at the words, Vermont Motel Giveaway Committee, terrified about what it might contain. Hank, it's here, I shouted. As the weeklies and my parents piled into the manager's quarters, Hank stood up and cleared his throat. Everyone, I think we can all agree that little Mia here has changed our lives, each and every one of us in this room, Hank said. Heads nodded. Hear, hear, Billy Bob said. Mrs. Q reached over and gave my hand a squeeze. Well, now it's her turn. Today, our girl's life is gonna change. And it's about time, I say. Woo! Fred cheered. Hank took his glass of cream soda and held it up. To Mia! Everyone held up their glasses. To Mia, the room boomed. I looked around the room, the corners of my eyes wet with gratitude. Love welled inside me as I smiled back at the weeklies. Here we were, strangers from all corners of the world, blown to the Cala Vista by the winds of life, only to find each other and re-emerge as a new family. Thank you guys so much, I said. I thought about how much I was going to miss the weeklies in Vermont, especially Hank, and a lump formed in my throat. Hank pointed to the envelope in my hand. May I do the honor? He asked me. I nodded. He took the envelope from me. This is it, people. Hank rubbed his hands together. We all held our breath as Hank opened the envelope. My heart raced so hard I thought it might come flying out. As Hank unfolded the letter, my mother put her fist to her teeth, her knuckles the color of porcelain. My father's knees were on the floor, his hands folded together, eyes on the ceiling. Okay, this is where I want you to make a prediction. Is she going to win the motel, or is she going to end up disappointed? Take your time, think about it. Let's find out. Hank read, "Thank you for applying for the Vermont Motel giveaway. We've read every single entry over very carefully, and we regret to inform you." Hank's smile vanished. What is it?" I asked. Hank put the letter down, and I knew. Oh, poor Mia. She must be so disappointed. That was chapters 55, 56, and 57. I want you to just think a little bit about these chapters, and if there's any questions you have, please let me know, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.